Residents of Noosa and the surrounding hinterland on Australia's famous Sunshine Coast have a proud tradition of honouring and preserving the unique array of ecological biomass and biodiversity which proliferates in this region. In thinking globally and acting locally, and by adopting strong conservation values, many residents have helped to protect this beautiful paradise.
It's a special place, not just because of the plants we see, but the animals that we can't see as well. A lot of them are sleeping in the daytime, a lot of them underground, and we see a very special place and know it's a place of unique subtropical significance to Australia.
The world-famous Noosa Biosphere is now facing a major crisis that will almost certainly destroy what's left of this area's significant and iconic koala population. Despite widespread opposition, the Queensland Government's Powerlinks Corporation intends to push ahead with a highly controversial project that will cut a 60-metre wide swathe of destruction through a unique nature corridor, which also protects and supports the richness of neighbouring biodiversity.
Any company that wants to build a power line through a magnificent valley where biodiversity, including koalas, are going to be harmed, must be educated about the impact.
Deborah Tabbert predicts the koala could be extinct in southeast Queensland within the next few years if attitudes such as these are not changed immediately.
I love the koala.
Wildlife campaigners say it's an impending tragedy of international proportions that will stain Australia's reputation as a nation that cares about the precarious future of our much-loved koala.
It's actually bringing well over $1 billion and over 9,000 permanent jobs, direct jobs, associated with koalas. Most tourists, when they come to Australia, want to see a koala. To lose a koala, I think, would have a significant impact on our tourist industry and certainly make us look a little bit sad in the eyes of the world.
An ugly row of pylons is proposed to be erected over a 73-kilometre distance from Wulluga to a new electricity substation in the heart of Irwar Vale. The planned site of the substation is on the rich alluvial floodplains, close to where the upper reaches of the Maruti River are born from the sacred springs. 8.5 kilometres of significant forest and nature corridor will also be detrimentally affected by the construction and ongoing maintenance of the high voltage transmission line easement and the carving out of 8-metre wide access tracks which will zigzag through at least 44 hectares of this unique environment, also exposing this area to weed invasion.
And so choices must be made in favour of that habitat. And what we have instead is a state government that is so hell-bent on development, development at any cost agenda, that they are prepared to deliver short-term outcomes for the development industry and forsake the kind of future that the rest of us want. Long-term disaster for most of us.
The transmission line proposal has become the biggest single challenge to the Sunshine Coast Regional Council's vision of becoming Australia's most sustainable region. No serious consideration has been given to 21st century solutions, such as a proven, effective and clean solar thermal energy system.
The sort of infrastructure they're talking about today is really archaic. The way of the future is going to be something about decentralised power systems. I think they're wasting their money putting in big power lines these days.
The Powerlinks plan contradicts the local council's strongly supported strategy to achieve a sustainable, low-carbon economy in the region. They're up against a corporation and a government that wants to lock the Sunshine Coast into at least another 20 years of coal-fired energy pollution.
I think personally that governments need to say, do we really need that infrastructure? And can it be put somewhere else?
Those opposed to the controversial project say if the Queensland Government cannot grasp the importance of the environment for our future, surely it can follow through on promises made on its websites and in its regional planning policy. The Queensland Government's total mismanagement of this energy supply issue is both appalling and hypocritical. They've promised to enhance regional landscape values and protect them from intrusive development. And yet, there appears to be no consideration being given to installing the infrastructure underground along the shortest and most accessible route along the highway. The costs involved relating to the proposed Powerlink project go far beyond any monetary expenditure. They should be seriously examining the health of the global ecosystem.
Certainly it makes more sense to put all your infrastructure into the same corridor if that's possible, without doubt.
Premier Anna Bligh states, "Our wildlife inheritance in Queensland carries with it a responsibility to protect and preserve it. But if this project goes ahead, the most northerly Richmond birdwing butterfly colony in the Noosa hinterland could also perish."
And if we don't put the halt to environmental disturbance right now and try and turn it around, we've good as lost the species, and especially to Queensland.
The koalas have been protected by the natural wilderness in this area, but they will lose their vital habitat and food source if the land is cleared. They would fall victim to predators such as wild dogs, dingoes and foxes when having to cross open ground. Mature koalas eat up to 1 kilogram of gum leaves every day. Scientists say a plan by the government to relocate koalas until their habitat can be replaced just won't work. They say destroying significant habitat on the one hand and offering incentives to plant tree seedlings that provide koala feed elsewhere makes no sense at all.
Every scientist worth their salt is telling us, and there's an alliance that just recently formed, it's about protecting the habitat that's here today and then adding to it. It's not about knocking down habitat and then fixing it up tomorrow, because tomorrow's too late.
The experts say it's imperative for the survival of the koala species on the Sunshine Coast and elsewhere that the Queensland Government update koala mapping in all areas. Whilst outdated desktop and federal EPBC Act 1999 data is being used, this unique environment is at risk.
I think the government authorities should do surveys to find out what's where. And it's very convenient to not know and then say, oh, but we didn't know. It went ahead and it cleared, and, you know, that's too bad. I mean, that's what we've done in other places too.
The removal of vegetation from the established richness of significant biodiversity will have damaging impacts on the health of the ecosystem, of birds and insects, including pollinating bees. When one source of food is lost, it affects the natural food chain. The project will also threaten the essential safe movement of all fauna and bird life. The interrelationship of all living things in this area is imperative for the conservation of this unique community of species that live here.
It's when you fragment them further, is that you all of a sudden realise in a few years' time the birds, particularly birds, woodland birds, forest birds, all of a sudden disappear.
As the alarm bells clang loudly over the obvious dangers to koalas and other wildlife from the proposed land clearing, there's growing evidence that human residents of the region who live here up to 24 hours a day will also be at risk from high voltage transmission lines. The Leukemia Foundation of Australia acknowledges and supports a prudent avoidance approach in relation to high-level EMF exposure. Although millions of dollars have been spent on scientific research, it's always advisable to stay away from EMF sources. Surely, existing landowners also have a right to oppose the installation of these above-ground transmission lines while doubts remain. And campaigners for the koalas say, it's time people power put a stop to this proposed Powerlink project and demand lesser impact solutions.
Collectively, if you put pressure on your local, state and federal members, you can have a major influence. I have not seen a community campaign lost yet when the community sticks together on an issue and puts their votes and their dollars in the right direction.
And so one of the reasons I think people here want to fight so hard is because Australia could be the leader for this new paradigm of sustainability, with the koala as the flagship.
We are the ones paying for all this, and we own the environment, and we own the future responsibility of the environment to our children and our children's children.
Ecologists and conservationists say, unless we all take action to stop this destructive high-voltage transmission line project now, the koala and other endangered flora and fauna species in the Noosa hinterland could be gone forever.